Excited to be here today. So yeah, I am Matt Wood. I've spent about a decade in SaaS, really helping scale revenue growth across multiple organizations and DevOps, cybersecurity, and data observability, specifically all the way from sub 1 million upwards of 100 million plus, resulting in 4 successful mergers or acquisitions. Yeah, I think you're seeing a big shift to where things are shifting more towards aligning with the buyer journey as opposed to here's the seller journey, here's the med pick stuff I have to gather, and more collaborative solutions are coming out where you're seeing, solutions like common room, areas where you can organize the entire buying process and make sure that everything is kind of in lockstep with their buying process. And I think that goes back to again, making sure that you do deep discovery with every single stakeholder in the organization to understand buying process, decision criteria, making sure that you're connecting to the economic buyer pretty early on, and making sure that you're collaborating in every step along the opportunity progression is that you're reiterating back, hey, here's what I understand, here's what I heard, here's what I think is important, making sure you check that with each stakeholder because you may get different answers, and that's important to understand. So oftentimes when people are struggling to get up to the economic buyer, and this has happened to me in multiple opportunities, you're working with the technical team, you think you understand the key initiatives and priorities that are driving this, and you get up to the economic buyer and you realize there's another layer above that that you really need to dial into and make sure that your product and your solution, the problem that you're solving, fits within what's important to them.
My name's Jeff Kirchick. I am the VP of Sales for Allware, which is an IT asset lifecycle management software company based in New York City, about 45-ish employees. And I've been working in software sales for about 15 years, which has been my career. I have been fortunate to be a part of multiple exits. Spent half my career at a Y Combinator company called Nextcaller, which was acquired by Pindrop Security a few years ago. I also wrote a book around that time called Authentic Selling: How to Use the Principles of Sales in Everyday Life, which I think accurately predicted the coming wave of artificial intelligence in the world of sales and how people would need to lean into a more authentic selling style in order to succeed. So that's a little bit about me. So I think that there's two ways that we can do that. I think that even though in most of, I just mentioned, right, like there's all these different people that you can involve in these deals. At the end of the day, though, I do believe that you are going to generally be working through a champion or maybe a couple of champions who are, kind of in the same team or kind of share the same motivations. And so a lot of times, in order to avoid misalignment, I'll kind of work through that individual. So to go back to the example I mentioned before, where say like maybe I want to get in front of the IT leader to make sure they're not going to block my deal. What I'll do is actually maybe first say to my champion, like, hey, I have found that the IT team generally can become a blocker if I don't do X, Y, and Z with them. So do you agree that we should go to that person and have this conversation with them? And if so, like, can I reach out to them or will you broker that for me? Right. You want to kind of like get them on the same page. Like, hey, this is why I want to have these conversations with your team. These are like how we get blocked. And that way you can help keep everyone on the same page because you're kind of being proactive about it. I think another way that you can do this is there's been a great rise in these deal rooms. These different platforms that are out there, Accord, Recapped, Aligned, there's several others, right? So I apologize those I didn't get to. We use PandaDoc in my company to build these different rooms where we have all of the information that's been shared, all of the proposals, all the right stakeholders have access to that platform. I think this is a no-brainer way to keep everyone on the same page. The adoption of it is still, it's young, it's in its infancy, I think, in terms of where it will get to. I think you'll start to see these things living in Slack to some degree, or where the communication platforms of the client. But yeah, those are a couple ways where I think we can keep people aligned.
I'm Nikita. I am the VP of Sales at an organization called PartnerStack. We help companies launch and scale channel and partner programs across the board. Yeah, I mean, there's probably there's a couple of things, right? Like we're trying to, maintain and continue to be very clear with our process, right? So we're trying to be, really upfront in our introductory calls about understanding, our customer needs and pain points and really getting into like what does an ideal solution look like for them and mapping that ideal solution to what PartnerStack can do in a lot of different ways. So, we're trying to be very clear on like what's your end state and kind of where can we get you to realistically. That's also involved us, bringing, I think selling together is like a really, really important thing. You shouldn't be selling alone. There should be other people in your call that come in with you, whether it's another salesperson or, somebody else on the team that can kind of accelerate that sale. One of those functions has always been solutions for us. So, like a solutions engineer, really diving deep and bringing the technical folks along for the ride. I find that when there is misalignment, some of that misalignment comes in with the folks that are actually implementing this internally. So I think the people that implement a lot of tooling, the RevOps folks, have seen, a lot of different tools implemented. They've seen, a lot of different things, go wrong. And so the sooner that you can bring them into that cycle, the sooner that you can get their buy-in and get them like understanding kind of what's going on, the faster a lot of things will go for you, naturally. And then, continuing to my earlier point, I think is to, just to simplify and accelerate the customer experience, right? So if you if you give them those trial accounts, if you let them and you give them control of the buying process as well too, then they have and they can feel and they can test out assumptions and their theories about like what the tool can actually do, right? And so if you have access to the tool in advance, if you've done a technical overview with your technical team, if you've done that mapping against your existing and what your ideal solution looks like, there should be very few instances where, there isn't, clear alignment basically between what you want and where you want to go, right? Now, things happen within organizations, people change, and so you might buy a piece of software and the buying committee changes, but from a upfront standpoint, at least you're being very clear about what your tool can do, and not only just putting the responsibility on yourself, but also putting the responsibility on your buyer too. To if you're giving them all these resources, you are trying to be as transparent as possible to kind of avoid any confusion or anything that might come up there.
My name is Kasey Devine. I've been in sales leadership, go-to-market leadership for the past 10 years. Done a lot of different things. A lot of my career has been in the SMB space, relatively vertical agnostic because I've bounced around from vertical to vertical. But really, my experience has been in the human resources, tech, and outsourcing services space. So you think about a company needs an idea that you pay money for, cash flow and equity, liquidity, and people. I've really been helping through it from a sales and sales leadership perspective to answer the people question. I think it's really important to begin with the end in mind and map that out, especially given that this is on the rise. It's prudent to look outside of your typical sources for inspiration. One of the things I've gone to that's been very helpful that aligns with what you're asking is a man by the name of Chris Voss, who does great work within negotiation. And I think it's tempting to understand negotiation as the end of a process, and it's actually the entire thing. If you can understand what motivates people and help drive to what matters, you'll get better alignment. So in my opinion, and again, I know I'm a little bit of an odd duck on some things, if you get to that point where there is misalignment, that happened probably farther back in the sales process than you'd care to admit. Or really, no, it's not something that comes out of left field. It seems like it does, but the problem started much longer before. So my advice is to slow down to speed up. So if whoever your contact is to start a sales process, don't take the bait of accelerating a process until you know the lay of the land of their side, and how you're going to help them. In these environments, why there is so much more complexity is because all of the stakeholders there have different perspectives, and that's not new. What is new is that the decisions being made are so much more impactful. And so the misses, if you buy something, you sign onto a service or product and you miss, that is so much worse now. And so there are more opinions there. Understanding that lay of the land is really crucial so that you can plan ahead. Now, when you do increase the number of folks you're talking to and buyers, you know where everything is, and it's not coming out of left field. I think that happens once, okay, you can learn from it, but if it happens multiple times, that's something you need to just plan ahead for.